Thanks, Luca, for this excellent presentation. I really would like to know more about your testing procedures, especially on mobile. So, on how many devices do you test the applications? Do you have some automatic procedures in place? Do you use some manual things that you do, and so on?
So, in terms of testing, for mobile, we are on a very rudimentary kind of state. So, for iOS, it's pretty straightforward. We have all devices, we test on all. It's still primarily manual process. So, you have to understand that most of the apps have a primary interaction through touch interface. So, it's very important to have the feel. So, we are still mostly reliant on people that spot the details, because it's the feel of the app, it's the interaction that you want to evolve, you want to have the emotions with the character. And that's not something that you will get with automation and so on. Also, we are looking into automating some stuff from the backend side. There are some interfaces that are definitely there that we'll need to automate. For example, new apps like My Talking Tom has substantial kind of stack of interfaces toward the backend that we would definitely need to test better. So that's the area that we are currently building. So I got the QA lead, in past years, so we are now building that team now. Also, we are in past year we have moved from being able to really develop 2-3 apps in parallel. So we actually scaled up the company substantially last year, and testing is actually the last area that we are currently big time lacking. So for Android, we are cherry picking the devices. We are cherry picking based on the analytics that we find out what people are using, and we are trying to acquire all important devices that get, I don't know, 5%, 2% of the market share, that are substantially different than others, and it's a pain. At the end, it's just a pain. It's and no automation, nothing will help, because at the end, you just have to find all these quirks and maintain them through years. So it's still the most painful part of our release process. So when we release updates, you can ask our testers, they said, oh, not again, because when you revive an app which was not updated for a year, it's a completely different beast now, putting it on the market with the new set of devices and so on. But you just have to, because otherwise it doesn't work well on the new set of devices coming out these days.
Thanks.
More questions? Come on, more questions. But anyway, I had the same question as Dusan, but I have another one. You're doing a lot of different things, like what's the team structure? How do you organize internally your engineering and interactions?
So when I joined, I joined as a technical director. I took over, at that point in time, was mostly founders. There were two additional employees in the art department, some general management and so on. So it was, we have currently, teams. We have iOS development team, we have Android development team. We have now a team focused on Unity development. And we have a backend team, which, it was small. So up to 2011, it was one developer on the backend. So now there are 3 full-time developers, but there is also one which is, you could call it DevOps, half developer. And there are now some students also helping out with lots of tasks in terms of data digestion and so on. But basically, I have one strong manager director for the backend side, for data analytics, who's running that part very independently. I'm still responsible for most of app development overall and overseeing all the stuff. And we'll have to also, in terms of team management, improve in next 6 months. So it's definitely an area that growth has bring forward. For the QA, as I mentioned, it's a QA manager responsible for that, who is now building up and ramping up the team to be able to accept all the new challenges we have in further months and years.
one question. I would like to hear some numbers about user testing, how it was done at the beginning, where you had to find the numbers if, let's say, 10 frames per second is enough, and how is it done, let's say, now. Moving to China, did you find some cultural differences? Is the app the same in China or in Europe? Do you find some cultural differences which are not acceptable here or there? And just one number, what is the revenue, let's say the ratio from iPad and from Android?
Okay, in terms of, the first question was related to the user testing. So user testing, we do it for all app releases, for all website changes, for everything, really. It's done ad hoc. It's done with many employees in the company, that are not there, with an accountant, with a legal advisor, with people from the street, with your family, and so on. We always do it ad hoc, so basically we just film what's going on. We have used scenarios built for particular stuff that we want to test, and then we just record. And you are just amazed sometimes, what you see, because we have done complete UI rework like 2 days before the release of an app that you would imagine that we can now, after I don't know how many, it was probably 10 apps before that, we could do it right, and it was for kid targeted, and then, we completely, screw it up, and we were just watching because we were ignoring, some early warnings that, that we have seen with some kids, So it's done ad hoc and it's done very targeted with a very specific questions that we want to answer. So we want to do this new integration between the two apps, and we make a model, we prototype the solution, we basically run it with 1 user, with 2 users, with 3 users, and we see whether it's progressing or not. And then we go back to the drawing board, we rework, and we do it again. So it's very important. In terms of cultural differences, I don't think we have that in China. China, we have a really big adoption rate, comparable to the population also and so on, and the number of potentially targeted users. It's challenging in Japan. Japan is more a market where you basically need to provide localized content, really. So our strategy is primarily to have a globally unique content that basically is generally acceptable. So that's how we look. So that's why we have to strip a lot. Lots of ideas. You couldn't imagine how many good ideas are dropped because this will be completely misunderstood in I don't know where. We really want to have this global reach. But this does not mean that we don't focus on some markets. So in terms of promotions and so on, yes, we focus. And we will focus more because Japan is, for example, high-paying market, but we definitely not get out of it as much as we would like. In terms of revenue, I cannot disclose much, but definitely, Android, which was lacking in times, it's now definitely the biggest in terms of ad revenue, everything is definitely the majority of the incomes in terms of comparable to iOS or Windows Phone or whatever. You have to understand Android is at 70-75% of the market now. Also, surprisingly, Windows Phone is not that low as we were anticipating. We were pushing back Nokia and Microsoft for 2 years. Then we said, okay, now with Unity we can do it. And actually we were positively surprised. We were positively surprised by how many users are there and how engaged they are and how they are desperate for good apps, which is also true.
Any questions in the back?
I have 2 questions. The first one is, are you hiring and which positions? And the second one is, I'm interested in the numbers actually in popularity of the apps. So I guess Talking Tom is the most known and the most popular. What about Talking Ginger, Talking Dog, Talking Parrot? percentages of the user downloads?
Okay, so yes, we are hiring all the time. So we are always open for good people. So in terms of positions, you know, some positions are not that clear even, you know. So as I said, you know, we are very flexible. I think it's more the fit. So, but currently, you know, we are definitely looking into on the backend engineers that would join our team in terms of all these data processing, collection of data, optimizing stuff, and so on. We are hiring on the app development side. So we hired some Unity developers. We are looking for more. We will definitely want to also get proper, let's say, team managers to run app development teams on a larger scale. Because, for example, my Talking Tom was already an effort of, on the development side, 5 developers, 2, you know, art developers, many artists, and so on. So it's a complex thing to develop. So it's also on project management side, also on team management side of it, maybe getting a game developer manager and stuff like that. So I think it's, you know, it's more, most of the hires we either do from our network, you know, that we know people, or that people actually see us as an opportunity and see, oh, there are big challenges there, you know, let's ask if they need some skills like mine. So the other question was about the characters. So definitely Talking Tom is the top character. All of the Tom apps are highly successful. So currently, in terms of active users, the last app, My Talking Tom, is currently the top app. It definitely has a much bigger engagement because it has more functionality. It was meant to be engaging on the longer side. Definitely, Ginger and Ben are probably on the second spot. Angela is slightly behind. So we are definitely betting on those characters because we, in essence, are an entertainment company. We are not an app development company. We are building an entertainment company that wants to build on our own brand. And that's why, you know, all those characters are important for cartoons, for movies, for all other entertainment mechanisms that you can think of. You know, that's definitely the future also. That's why all of them are important to have a story. Questions?
Yeah, can you say something about the short-term plans?
Shorter plans? Good question. You know, not much to disclose, you know, because, you know, we definitely don't disclose what we are doing in terms of new apps and so on. I mentioned some on the backend side, you know, definitely there are lots of fronts that we are moving forward, so it's probably the area that will need to improve quite some in next 6 months. But definitely, you know, one area that we are constantly betting now is that we need to invest a lot into our old titles, refresh them, give new content in. That's one let's say, level of development that will constantly going on. But definitely new app titles and definitely new content in that regard.
Yes, I have a technical question. You were talking about the background noise and the cancellation problem. So I was wondering, how did you solve it in the end, if you can share?
Yeah, so at the end, you know, basically, we were just cutting out, you know, we are just doing, trying to analyze ambient noise when we are listening at the beginning. We are just doing it with the level of difference on the voice, of the volume level and on the gain. We are doing it slightly differently on Android and iOS, because on Android, we are using the buffers from the microphone. How much inflow do we get in? We get a bit more data out, because it's also, you know, for example, Galaxy Note, the initial one, has so great gain that, you know, it can hear his own haptic feedback, you know. So basically, based on that, instead of cutting out with fast Fourier transform, we are actually trying to figure out, you know, what is the white noise at the back, you know, with the volume level, and try to cut it out, you know, basically amplify stuff further on to cut it off in that regard. So it's very simple stuff, that we're tuning basically for different devices. iOS was really straightforward because, in all Apple hardware, the microphone is behaving pretty much the same. Android, it took a couple of releases actually to get to the level that we are now pretty satisfied with most devices. It was another pain in Unity, don't ask me there, because Unity is lacking in microphone support, so we had to resort back to half native, half Unity kind of methods in that regard also.
Hi. How much, if anything, do you spend on marketing?
I don't know. We don't, we don't, invest a lot in terms of buying external campaigns or whatever. We never did a lot. We are really counting a lot on our own cross-promotion mechanism and innovation in that regard. How to make cross-promotions, how to promote better to our users and so on. Because we have the huge user base, it's just a question of how we don't abuse that powers. It's a thin path that you need to, you should not cross, and you need to basically watch out constantly and develop new methods because, users get used to one thing and then you need to introduce something else.
Hello. Do you have any plans about porting to console platforms?
Not really. We are, because consoles are, from our perspective, specialty market. This does not mean that other more common platforms might not evolve that would be interesting. So for example, smart TVs might be an interest for us because it's every home. So if this will become a kind of evolving platform, it will become of interest. So, but to invest into one platform that is then very diversified and so on, and you are limited to very small, in our perspective, user base, because we are counting on getting, hundreds of millions of downloads, comparable to consoles that, you have to fix the distribution and so on, which is challenging. So, apps, mobile are still the best distribution platforms for us. But smart TVs, more devices, in your home or whatever that will become around, we are definitely looking at opportunities there.
Here, your search for new ideas, I see on the internet site, and I'm asking what kind of relationship or requirements do you offer to new developers who have new applications?
I'm not sure if I'm the right person to answer this. We are basically collecting those ideas and we will see based on the opportunity and basically what the potential partner would actually brought to the table. So definitely we are in the position that we can explore some opportunities. There are many ideas. We get many ideas every day. But we can not even implement all our ideas. So at the end, it's just a question of having something unique on the table, maybe having also a unique capabilities behind that idea that might make it viable for us. Then I think everything is open, in terms of cooperation. So I don't think it's very well defined in that regard. So we have our own fan network as a publishing business where we publish third-party apps, which we then cross-promote through our systems. That's one way of doing it, but it doesn't mean it's the only one. Also, we are not just searching ideas in terms of app development. As I said, we want to develop as an entertainment company, so we also want ideas in other aspects, in licensing, branding, TV, other presences where we could actually utilize our brand, our talking characters, and so on.
Okay, opportunity for last question.
You mentioned TV and you mentioned that you are pushing Windows behind. What about, are you thinking about Firefox OS, about HTML5?
Not really. we are many times we go into we evaluate some options, you know. We get pushed by some vendors, you know, we get asked, you know, so we evaluate those options. But again, you know, we really want to be in a mass market. So we always value this, you know, is this now will become a mass market or not? Will this have a critical mass that it's worthwhile to invest? Because at the end, you know, you also have to simplify you as a company, you know. If you go on too many fronts, you know, you will start failing on your key fronts also, you know, because you will not have, you know, just infinite resources or focus and so on to develop all fronts. So we are very pragmatic in that regard. So thank you very much again. There are my contacts there. You know, check our webpage. There are also some job offers there. If you are interested, we are always looking for new people, also students that will join the company. So if you're interested, just get in contact. Thank you.
Thank you.